Hello, welcome to the program. Today's show is about the 48,900 jobs, count them, 48,900 jobs that President Barack Obama tells us he's creating in Greater South Texas, fulfilling his campaign pledge made to me while seeking your vote and mine, both in March and in November, and what it means to you. In the studio to help us analyze the Barack Obama stimulus package that he has now signed into law, those billions of dollars going out into the economy across the United States of America, Dr. Russell Adams, a professor of international business and marketing, University of Texas, Brownsville, Texas Southmost College. Welcome to the program. And returning by popular demand, Dr. Tony Knopp, emeritus professor of history at UTB-TSC. Welcome, Tony. Thank you for coming and being with us here on the program one more time.
Glad to be here.
$787 billion in stimulus money, a lot of it coming to South Texas from San Antonio all the way to Del Rio, then to Brownsville, north to Corpus Christi, back up to New Braunfels, according to the White House. And in that region alone, if you look at the map on the screen now, you'll see that in that area, 48,000 jobs expected to be created. Is that good news for South Texas?
Well, on the face of it, I'd say yes.
How quickly will those dollars begin to flow in reality?
Well, I mean, that's always an issue. I mean, definitely we need this money to flow quickly. We can definitely look at the economy and know that the longer that it takes, the more people will lose jobs and so on, and which is, just leads to a spiraling effect. So the sooner the better. We do know, however, historically government does not move quickly. So one hopes that they will move quickly, recognize the importance of acting as quickly as possible. And I think by the fact that they are going after shovel-ready projects means that we can get rid of a lot of the delay time that we'd normally see.
A lot of the people watching us here on the program today, they're looking to hopefully keep the jobs they have, or their friends and neighbors and family members, or if those jobs have been lost, which over 600,000 have already been lost in the Lone Star State during the recession, then they're anticipating and hoping that these dollars will flow sooner rather than later. Now, Dr. Tony Knopp's here with us today because he and I are going to kind of talk a little bit about the political ramifications of all of this and how it gets into the circumstance that President Barack Obama, being a Democrat president, the one really behind this stimulus package, how it stacks up with him on one side, and then all three state Republican leaders, those being United States Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison, United States Senator John Cornyn, and then the Republican governor of Texas, Rick Perry, all three over in an anti-stimulus mode, and what that means to them and their political realities and their political futures, as it were, because Kay Bailey Hutchison running for governor against Rick Perry, trying to get him evicted from the Texas governor's mansion. But they're really kind of in a quagmire, are they not? Because, Tony, they have been anti-stimulus. Kay Bailey Hutchison missing an AWOL, according to Governor Perry, very critical of her for having missed a very key vote on the stimulus package, coming to Texas to run against him for governor. And yet, on the other hand, he's siding with the governor of South Carolina, saying the money shouldn't even be flowing. So on that particular circumstance, aren't they being a little bit duplicitous if, in fact, ever down the road they start taking credit for some of the great highways and levee improvement projects and dams that are built and the like?
Well, first of all, I don't think they were against a stimulus package. They were against this stimulus package, which they felt was overloaded with pork and that the money would not get spent in a timely manner. At least that's been the position of the Republicans, who, by the way, were nearly unanimous in their opposition to this bill, which you indicated was Barack Obama's bill. Well, yes, he did endorse it, and he has been pushing it, but it was written, apparently, by Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid up in Congress.
That's John Cornyn's position,
exactly,
taken on the Sunday morning talk show circuit.
Well, and I think it's not just Cornyn's position. I think it's pretty clear that this is what the president was presented with as a fait accompli, and he didn't have much choice at this juncture but to support it, in that he needed to get something through pretty fast.
The point you're making is Barack Obama coming on scene a little bit late, with taking over the White House in January, really didn't have an opportunity in reality to make it a bipartisan bill.
Well, at least he didn't assert himself early enough in order to have the kind of impact on the bill that could have made it bipartisan. He was reaching out, I think, to Republicans. I mean, he did the front work.
Went to the Capitol. I mean, that's almost unheard of for previous presidents going to the Capitol to solicit cooperation from the opposing party.
And I think in some respects it was sincere effort, but he had nothing to offer them in terms of a bipartisan bill.
So here you've got the President of the United States seems to be fulfilling a campaign commitment, trying to push it through at this particular point as President of the United States within 30 days of being in the White House. That's something, I guess, as we voters looking at what he has done in making a commitment to this reporter and now doing something about it, and we have a president who believes that what he made as a commitment is something he needs to live up to.
Well, I don't think he had much of a choice at this point. Here is a big crisis, an economic crisis here in the United States. If he doesn't tackle it head on, he's going to be in political trouble. But he did. He did what he needed to do to get to at least take the position that he's getting the country moving again.
171-page document. A lot of the funds will be moving to the states. That's going to put a lot of particular influence and power and angst to some degree in the Appropriations Committee at the state level, because the new vice chairman of that particular august group from Laredo, Richard Raymond, going to be vice chairman of appropriation, Quito Flores on appropriation. They're going to have all these billions of federal dollars that they're not going to have to figure out where all of that goes. Additionally, we do have on the other side, in the Senate, we do have Chuy Hinojosa, the senator from McAllen. District goes all the way up to Corpus Christi. He's going to be vice chair of the Senate Finance Committee. So South Texas is going to be somewhat in a good stead, I guess you would agree, in being in that particular catbird seat, as it were. The importance to the levy comments made by Barack Obama on satellite to this reporter is secure, because that $224 million is going directly to the International Boundary and Water Commission. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Let's talk about right now what the cities have asked for as a wish list, Russell.
Well, it's interesting as we go through the different lists, we definitely see that many of the border cities asked for a lot of different things. Interestingly, Brownsville asked for 3 things, but one large project is the Weir Dam project, and as I understand it, it has a lot of potential for Brownsville and is important. And I think it's interesting that maybe the strategy is by not throwing out a lot of different things, because if we look at Del Rio or McAllen and so on and so forth, I mean, they have a lot of different things that they're asking for.
The question is, are they going to prioritize these?
Yeah,
are they going to go up to the legislature and say, these are the ones that are really critical for us?
Right.
Secondly, I think we have an opportunity, a unique opportunity in this country right now to deal with infrastructure issues that have been hanging over us for a number of years. And I see in the projects that Laredo has listed some very critical ones. Sewer lines. I know this is not glitzy to talk or sexy to talk about sewers, but the sewer problem throughout the country is a rather critical one. Sewer lines were laid 50 to 75 years ago, and many of them are falling apart at this time. Well,
and downriver people from Laredo all the way to Brownsville, they need to be concerned about the sewer lines in Laredo upriver from where they live. So, City of Brownsville asking for Weir Dam dollars. Those dollars would improve the river level from the dam site all the way through Brownsville, between Brownsville and Matamoros, and that would create a lake, as it were, between those communities. And even the city itself is in its wish list indicating that will in itself curtail illegal crossings of that improved body of water. Now, we're going to run now right for you, Professor, what's happening between Laredo. Laredo is trying to get a Rio Grande River Vega project constructed to create an economic zone, a river walk situation similar to what exists in San Antonio, with all kinds of activity, with restaurants and clubs and eateries and a lot of people doing things. And that, if in fact would work in Laredo and in Brownsville, with Brownsville trying to get the Weir, I'm only concerned and some cut confused because Laredo did not even ask for their River Vega project in their wish list to the federal government.
I definitely think that idea of the Riverwalk and basically an economic zone, I know there's been talk in Brownsville for many years of developing the downtown and so on and so forth. And I think the idea of creating a dam and therefore creating essentially waterfront property in the downtown area is definitely an idea with a lot of merit. Definitely increase the economic levels and changes the nature of what the downtown is and revitalize it.
I think the idea is to get the communities again to refocus and look toward the river as opposed to away from the river. The communities of Laredo, Nuevo Laredo started because the river was there, igualmente, in Brownsville and Matamoros. And in those days, the river actually was the lifeblood of the community, not only as water, the only water source, but that's where the steamboats were coming up and down. And since then, over the eons of time, the community has faced away from the river. And now the idea is to focus back on, like has happened in San Antonio.
Well, it would be highly desirable for that to happen, but perhaps one of the reasons that they're not focusing on it right now is the problems that they've got right now in the border communities in Mexico. The violence and the drug issues have prompted people to refocus away from the river because of these issues.
And the creation and construction of a river wall brought Seneca to the natural barrier,
exactly
to make
right.
it even worse.
Exactly right.
To make it a demilitarized zone.
I think very disheartening for the people living in the border communities to see this wall going up as a barrier, an additional barrier of spirit between the communities on both sides of the river.
Now, as Obama's Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is obligated to fulfill President Barack Obama's commitments that he made to me during the campaign, not only on the I-69 interstate, that is a major key component to connecting exports and imports to the nation's #1 trading partner, Canada, and the #3 trading partner, Mexico, but to being a champion now for the border region by going after the additional International Boundary and Water Commission funding that may be required. More funds, more than the $224 million that's currently in the stimulus package as signed into law by President Barack Obama. More money may be needed, I think, because to do what's necessary to improve the deficient dams that President Obama said in his first news conference in the White House, and to get those levees up to handle Category 4 or 5 storm, may take more than that $224 million that's currently in the stimulus package.
Well, we're concerned, obviously, as a result of the last hurricane and what's going to happen. You get another one that goes up the river and dumps a huge amount of water behind those dams. Will the dams suffice to control the flooding that we are afraid may be headed our way?
And also, Russell, the #1 land port in the United States is the crossing at Laredo for imports and exports. If you think about the fact that Amistad, according to the IBWC, already has over 30 sinkholes in the Amistad Dam. The last time all the bridges failed at Laredo between those two communities was after Hurricane Alice hit, knocked off every dam, knocked out every dam on the Rio Grande in the city of Laredo. So it makes it more important for that third international dam to be created and constructed sooner rather than later, because we don't know when the next hurricane is going to come and wipe out bridges from here all the way to El Paso.
No, it's definitely true. I mean, Laredo's importance for us is critical because of, I mean, just the huge amount of traffic that passes through there, the huge amount of trade. And closing down that would definitely have ripple effects throughout the country. So definitely protecting that whole area from further hurricane damage is of critical importance. And, you know, just the last couple of years living here and seeing the impacts, and we find that those impacts tend to be greater inland than they are actually here on the coast. And I think sometimes people forget that aspect, that these hurricanes do not stop at the coast. They keep going and dump their water, especially up in that region.
Hurricane Dolly actually did probably as much damage in El Paso as it did in any other community right on the coast.
Correct.
Dr. Adams, how really does all of these billions of dollars flowing across the United States, in particular to create those 48,000 jobs in South Texas, San Antonio South to the Valley, Brownsville up to Laredo, over to Corpus Christi, how are these dollars going to trickle down and get in the pockets of our viewers here today?
Well, I think from looking at the stimulus package, I think some of the key areas are definitely with the education area and the medical. Given our current population, the growth in our population. It's a young population at the border. It's definitely, education is going to be a critical growth area. And from what I see, the main important thing is not to lose services because we continue to grow. Basically, our services has to continue with that growth. And I think through that's how we're going to see the major impact from a lot of this. To some extent, there will be increasing construction jobs and so on and so forth. But for me, what I see is mainly the importance to maintain the system and infrastructure we already have, and not let that decline.
Exactly. I think the danger is that as tax revenues drop, that the money might not be there to pay for all the positions in the school districts. So if this money comes into education, that will provide the support to keep the education services at least their present level and maybe increase them.
And you're talking about coming over the transom from Washington, D.C.,
Yep.
coming into the state, which is looking at a $10 billion shortfall,
Right.
according to Susan Combs, the state comptroller.
And I think additionally to that, though, it's like if you look at businesses in previous recessions, this is the time that you retrench. This is the time we build our skill base so that when the economy does turn around, we're in a much stronger position than we were before. So, training and educating a lot more of our workforce so that they're higher skilled, so that they will then become more resilient in the future. And what you do see is during recessions an increase in enrollment in education.
We've seen that in the past at the University of Texas at Brownsville, Texas Southmost College, where we have not had a slumping off of enrollment during a recession, but rather an increase as people realize the need to improve the skills in order to be more competitive in the workforce.
So it'd be a travesty to see as enrollment increases, funding decrease.
Exactly.
And the importance of the region from San Antonio south to the border is this is the young, these are the mid-20s average age. These are the lower income level individuals, predominantly Democrat by the way. And these are creating the workforce members because they get educated at the border, south of Texas, and they go north of Interstate 10 and go to the metropolitan areas of Houston, Dallas, and so forth.
Exactly.
We lose a lot of people. As a matter of fact, that kind of disturbs us sometimes that we're providing the educational training for a lot of people who then, having achieved the skill levels, then leave the South Texas and go to the major urban areas. And it bothers us, I think, that we're losing that element that are so critical to our own development.
Primarily what is in the stimulus package, gentlemen, that will help the health care and access to health care so critical in Texas with such a high number of the uninsured in the Lone Star State. Try and create a more improved technology. There's a $20 billion number in improved technology because if we had improved technology and record keeping on technology as opposed to handwritten with doctors writing in handwritten.
It's hard to avoid the conclusion that this would be a very positive thing to do. A lot of doctors have not gone into technology where it comes to the record keeping. In other words, they've still got the manila folder with your records in it. I know mine does.
Right.
And getting this kind of information online would be very critical, I think, for modern medicine. If you're able to communicate between the general, the family physician and the specialist, for example, by just a click, sending those records over to the specialist or to the hospital, how much better that would be, I think.
I think one of the ideas is if everything that all the particular tests that you or I may have taken when we're in fact a patient, if all the doctors could access all of those tests, then there would not be all these other tests that you've got to take. Because many times you go to one doctor and you'll take all these tests, and you go to another doctor, he wants you to take the same test all over again that you just took the day before or the week before.
There's no denying that the technology needs to be revamped for the healthcare system overall. I used to work in the healthcare system many years ago, and I definitely saw the inefficiencies, especially with treatment, because we couldn't decide who did what, when, to whom, and so on and so forth. So the technology should help that. But also the package has a lot of, with prevention and wellness. That's very important. Especially in South Texas, where we have a large rate of diabetes, and they definitely need to look at ways to fix these problems. And also basically healthcare centers and increased number of healthcare workers. There's definitely a shortage of these workers. And this is the beauty of these jobs, is they tend to be high-paying jobs, which of course then adds a further stimulus to the local economies.
If we can have a situation where we're funneling fewer people into the emergency rooms in the hospitals and going to health care centers, getting advanced treatment and getting treatment in advance, certainly that would be a benefit.
Basically, we can save a lot of money by treating things preemptively.
Now, we've been using for information a story off mysanantonio.com provided by Gary Martin, in particular, the journalist who wrote it for the San Antonio Express News. You can go to ronwhitlock.com. We'll direct you back to the story. But in particular, fellas, not only is the region of the border, Brownsville, Matamoros, Laredo, Nuevo Laredo, upstream in El Paso, trying to create with Rio Vega in Laredo, similar to San Antonio's Riverwalk. The San Antonio River Authority, their general manager, Susan Scott, is lobbying for $69 million out of these billions of dollars from the stimulus package for river improvements there in the Alamo City between Mission Concepcion and the dam at Mission Espada. So even San Antonio, even though they got their Riverwalk pretty well handled, they're still asking for more money to improve their river because it is so important to the tourism economy of the Lone Star State of Texas. So if we were to have the same, we at the border region, Brownsville, Matamoros, Laredo, Nuevo Laredo, El Paso, Juarez, with a Riverwalk situation could be fantastic for the entire state of Texas. Correct?
Love to see it.
Wouldn't it be
Love to see
fantastic?
it.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yes, it would.
Mariachis on both sides. Thank you much for coming and being
Thank
with
you,
us.
Ron. Always good to see you.
Dr. Tony
Thank
Knott,
you very much for having me.
Dr. Russell Adams, thank you for joining us here on Ron Whitlock Reports. Till next time, adios.